man calling the play-by-play in the booth will be our good friend Joe Buck. He joins us now. Joe, it's Michael, Don, and Peter. How you doing today?
I am good. How are you guys?
Doing great. We were talking to Scott Van Pelt earlier, and he agreed that this is a huge game for the Jets. Do you look at it the same way, Joe?
Yeah, I don't know how you can not. I mean, it's obviously an opportunity. It's obviously the first game after Salah's firing, and, you know, you can talk about, well, it's a battle for first place. We're only in week, whatever it is, six.
Yeah.
Not that big of a deal, but I think it would be a nice step forward if they could get this win. It's been frustrating to start the season so much so that the head coach is gone. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot on the line tonight, really, for both teams. I mean, the Bills come in having lost 2 in a row and got blown out by Baltimore and then had to fight their way back against Houston and lost in kind of crazy fashion. So I think both teams look at this game like we need it, and that's always good for us when you're doing it on a Monday night. It feels like a game that, you know, has little extra significance to it.
I wonder how they look at it, or even you look at it. Usually when you fire a coach, it works better in other sports than in football. You have a soft landing for the coach's first game, so you try to get a win, build up something, and here is Buffalo, a battle for first place on national television. But I'm wondering, do they have the Bills' number? They played very well against them at MetLife, won back-to-back games there. Miracle winning last year's game after what happened to Rodgers. Why do you think the Jets seem to match up well with Allen and the Bills at MetLife?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing is Josh turned the ball over 4 times last year. 3 interceptions and a fumble loss. That's usually a recipe for disaster. Amazingly, Josh has not thrown an interception this season, although he joked with us when we met with him. He said, I've thrown interceptions, they just haven't caught them. So, he's looking at this season like, hey, no interceptions through 5 games. And if he keeps that up, they're going to be hard for the Jets or any team to beat. I mean, Allen is that kind of a special athlete. But you're right. I mean, some teams have the other team's number. And we'll see if the Jets get some sort of bounce tonight from making the coaching change. I get a good feeling from them. I have a great feeling from Jeff Ulbrich. And, even talking to Aaron, who, at times can be brutally honest. I think, with the change of coordinator, people wondering how he's going to react to that. I think I asked him at the end of our talk, I said, how optimistic are you? He said strong to quite strong. So whatever that means in Aaron Rodgers' mind, that's up to anybody's interpretation. But I feel like they think they're going to come out and play hard tonight.
I'm curious because behind the scenes, the national guys that are broadcasting the game, as you mentioned, you get to talk to these people longer and probably more in-depth than even the beat writers do. What was your take when you used to speak to Robert Salah? Did you like him? Did he come across as a guy in total control, Joe?
Yeah. I mean, unequivocally, yes. He was very open. I think sometimes you can kind of get a sense for a person just through those calls, and some guys kind of come off as a little paranoid or worried about sharing too much, and Robert was not that way at all. So, I mean, from what we can tell, and we're not there every day, we're not in the facility, we don't know, what's going on a minute-by-minute basis, but I think Troy would say the same thing. We always came out of our calls and talks with Robert Salah really impressed, and that goes back to his time with San Francisco when he was running that defense. So it'd be revisionist history to say, oh, yeah, he seemed like he didn't really know. No, that wasn't the case at all. He was great.
Do you think we're getting ahead of ourselves, Joe, and feeling like from what we've seen so far, maybe Baltimore in the AFC and Detroit in the NFC are the realest deals we have going?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, are we getting ahead of ourselves? For sure. But I think after, 6 games, if you want to include tonight, I think those are the 2 best teams. I mean, what Detroit did in Dallas yesterday, I don't know if it says more for Detroit or if it says more for Dallas, but it was ugly and just a complete beatdown. But they lose Hutchinson in the process, and that's a big loss for any team. And you could feel that just kind of hanging over the rest of that game after that ugly injury happened. But I think the way they are so varied, I think their roster is outstanding. Goff has been rejuvenated. in his time in Detroit. And they're tough to beat, and they can beat you a lot of different ways. So they would get my vote. And, yeah, Baltimore right now, nobody wants them. Nobody wants to play them, and they can beat you now through the air or with Henry just pounding it up the middle. So when teams can beat you in various ways, those are the scary ones, and both those teams qualify for that.
It's so amazing how, I guess, style points matter, because the two teams that we kind of ignored in this last couple of minutes have been the two undefeated teams in Kansas City and Minnesota. Like, obviously, Kansas City's for real. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls, but this might be one of those years where it doesn't feel like there's going to be like a dominant team, that when the two undefeated teams seem to have their share of weaknesses and can actually play better.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We can't dismiss those teams, but I think when you kind of go inside the numbers and inside the records, Kansas City's just so injured. I mean, you lose your top running back, you lose your top two wide receivers, you're going to feel that. And, it's basically just, hey, Patrick, go win it, and Andy Reid, go figure out a way to get it done, and they do. I mean, we saw it last Monday night. So, you have to definitely count them in the conversation. And then Minnesota, how real are they? I don't know. But I'm really excited to see the success for Sam Darnold. And I know Jets fans aren't, but, the guy's been through quite a bit. And to see him kind of come out the other end of it and on a 5-0 team, although he wasn't that great against the Jets, I think it's interesting as an outsider to see that happen. But I agree with what you said at first. To me, it's Detroit and Baltimore, and then we'll see how the rest of the season plays out.
I'm sure you and Troy talk before the game, talk all the time. What is his take? What is your take on what Rodgers has looked like so far? Do you think it's a step back from the MVP Rodgers? Is it a step up from the last year in Green Bay? What are you seeing?
I mean, I think he's kind of fallen in line with everything else around him. And, he's a 40-year-old quarterback coming off a major injury, and, he's played well at times, and he has played not well at times. And I think he's been pretty open about, if I played better, the firing wouldn't have happened. And I think you have to agree with that. I mean, the offense is lagging, obviously, so far behind the defense. The defense is outstanding and playing really well, and the offense has turned the ball over a lot and missed some receivers and drops by receivers, and they can't run the ball. I mean, I'm anxious to see if they can establish the ground game in this game. And for a Buffalo team that's allowing over 5 yards a carry, tonight's the night to do it. And for a team that just fired its head coach, tonight's the night to do it for the Jets, and they got to go do it. And like both Ulbrich and Downing told us, they've told their offensive line, quit trying to be perfect. And I think it applies to Garrett Wilson and guys on the outside, too, for Rodgers. Quit trying to play perfect. Go play fast. Find somebody to block and block them. Don't worry about your footwork. Don't worry about your technique. Just get it done. And I think they're going to come out with some jump here at the start. And I'm anxious to watch it.
Would you think, though, that Rodgers would have a problem, Joe? Because, he's been throwing constantly, and, he's got one of the great arms in the history of the NFL. If all of a sudden Downing decides, we're just going to run the ball down the throat and you hand off.
Would he have a problem with that? Not if it's working. No, I think I do believe him. He's got every individual award possible, times 4 in the MVP category, and 4-time All-Pro. So, no, I don't think he's worried about how. I think he's just worried about getting wins. And, that's why he wanted to come here, is to get the Jets into the postseason and to get them, another Super Bowl. And however it has to get done, I fully believe Aaron Rodgers would be on board. If Breece Hall goes off tonight and has 130 yards, I think he'd be thrilled. And I honestly believe that. And
Moses coming back, too, has got to help, too. He felt like he was a really good run blocker that they missed over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I mean, he was brought in here for that reason, and I guess the rookie held up well when he was there. But, they get their offensive line back tonight. And, again, just go play fast. Reestablish the line of scrimmage as you go down the field. And so, they may be banging their head against the wall here early, but I think they're going to try, like heck, to get the two backs going
And then what comes off that, the amazing thing that we've seen with Aaron, and Troy and I have watched it a million times, is his ability with play action and how he works with play fakes. And when you've got a running game that's working, play action passes work brilliantly. When you've got a running game that can't run, play action passes don't work. They don't respect it. So establish the run, and then everything works off that. I think that's how they go into the game tonight.
Before we let you go, I'm curious to get your take on this, Joe. This was usually the month where you'd be doing baseball games, and each team's fan base would think you hate their fans. And I just want to get your take.
Right. Only one of them was right, by the way. I'll just never say which one was right.
You know what? I like that. Keep it a secret. But when you see the social media vitriol directed at announcers, particularly an iconic voice in Bob Costas, what does that make you think about, our business now? Everybody is Andrew Marchand because everybody has a megaphone. What's going on that this sort of thing is like normalized now?
Well, there's only one Andrew Marchand.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just leave that there. And I want Andrew to hear this. I want him to be nice to me, and I want him to say great things.
All right.
There's only one Phil Mushnick.
Oh.
I'd say thank God for that.
He's already writing about the fact that you have to be on the show today. There's a big ESPN plan. He's writing about.
We're
exactly
because we have you on.
So go ahead.
So
Sorry.
amazing. So there's such a. Yeah, there's really a deep meaning in my appearance in
so many people worked on
you
this.
really need the ratings.
Yeah. It's Derek Volner's fault, and I love you guys, so I said yes. That's as deep as it goes. I could do a seminar on this stuff, and I could teach a college course on it. And when I talk to young announcers, this is answering your question, by the way, about when they get into the business. One of the first things I tell them is to turn off social media, because everybody's there to be wittier or nastier than the next. And I'm not doing the, social media sucks and everybody's mean, because that's not the case. You see a lot of good stuff being done on social media too, but forever I was the only guy that was doing national baseball during the social media era, and I've taken my lumps, and it wore me out. I could sit here and go, oh, that stuff doesn't bother me. It bothered me. And, I don't know how, if you're a human being who cares about what other people, think and do, and you try to be a good person and you try to do a good job, and then you read, how much you suck, or you're lucky that you had a famous dad, and, you hate my team and all that other stuff. As silly as some of that stuff is, it gets annoying, and it just takes some of the fun out of it. So, when people go, hey, do you miss doing the national baseball? Yeah, on one hand, sure. I want to be sitting there in the ninth inning and somebody gets a big double into the corner and a runner scores from first base and a team wins and the crowd goes crazy. I want to be the one calling that. But there's that other side of the coin, too. So, it's just ridiculous. And I get it, because fans care, and that's the good side of it. But for Bob to go through that, or anybody, Joe Davis or, Brian Anderson or whoever, you have to just tune that stuff out and go do your job, and you either do that or don't do it. And so these days I'm not doing it, and somebody else is, and they can enjoy that, and I can just go home and go to bed.
See, I'm so glad you said that, Joe, because I have arguments with Don and Peter, because it does affect me when I see it, and I stop reading it after a while, but you're a human being. You want to be liked by people, and if you see all this nastiness, it does have an impact. And I'm glad that somebody at your level can admit it.
You get to the point, Michael, you get to the point where you feel like everybody thinks that. And then you walk through the world, and you go, you know what? Not everybody's saying that. Nobody really cares, to be honest with you. If you're calling, you needed to be more excited. You needed to be less excited. And it affected my calls. And here's the part where we tab awful announcing. In 2006, I made a call at the end of the World Series, and I was so beaten down by he's from St. Louis. The Cardinals are going to win the World Series. They're going to beat the Tigers. And, how's the St. Louis guy doing this? And this is awful. He hates it. And I can honestly say, when you do these games, I'm worried about my job. I'm not, and I used to joke, I'm not worried about the result in the field any more than the guys on the field are worrying about how good of a job or bad of a job I'm doing in the booth. I've got a job to do. They've got a job to do. So you just call it. But when you get death by 1,000 cuts, it starts getting in your head, and you're like, I don't want to get too crazy and too excited because then everybody in Detroit's going to think I'm rooting for the Cardinals, which is the furthest thing from my mind, except right then. And then it kind of takes the starch out of it. So, by the time I came back from my vocal issue, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to let it rip. I'm not going to try to be Pat Summerall Jr. I'm just going to go have fun and be myself. And if people like me, great. And if they don't, I don't care. And, that's the way that's the only way to be in this business.
And, don't make, Michael make me out to be like I've got it all figured out. I get ripped, calling Ranger games too. And in doing this show, we all go through it. But what I found that worked for me, I don't know if you go through it. If I think I nailed it, I don't feel the need to go to social media. It's when I don't think I nailed it that I go. So then I realized, really, it's only about how I feel about it, so why to go at all?
Well, I don't ever think I nailed it. And so consequently, you kind of go in with like one eye open. And by the way, this will also be taken as like, oh, these guys are sitting there whining about getting made fun of on social media and all that. I get it. Everybody's soft, and the person that's tweeting it has got the world figured out. I'm just not – I don't go there to get validation for my career or my life or my existence. And, like I started to say, I tell young people getting in, turn it off. Find 3 or 4 people whose opinion matters to you, who you think is going to give you an honest opinion. This is what I told Tom Brady. Turn it off. Find 3 people whose opinion you trust and ask them. And then watch your own stuff and be honest with yourself. Is it good enough? Is it not? And if you can, then I think you're better off than going and, licking your thumb and holding it up to the wind to see if you're any good or not. Because more than likely, the Twitterverse is going to tell you you're not.
The subtle flex of giving career advice to Tom Brady, Joe, was unbelievable.
What a jerk, Peter.
Well, let me tell you. Don't. That's no flex, because Tom Brady called everybody he's ever met about doing broadcasting.
Really? He was that on top of it, huh?
I mean, and good for him. He took everybody's temperature on it, and he was wonderful to talk to. And he talked to Troy, talked to me, talked to Romo, he talked to Olsen. I mean, on and on and on. So, that's his preparation, and good for him. And I was happy to share whatever I had with him. And I'll continue to do so when he asks. I'm here to help whoever wants help.
I wanted to ask you before we let you go. You and your wife did a great job, in a sort of playful way, talking about the freak golf accident where you accidentally drove a ball into her legs and she had to have surgery. But I got to ask you, though, man, I saw you, post about this, that you still, wake up hearing the sound. In all seriousness, you guys made it sort of light and fun because all's well that ends well. How scary was it when you realized you'd hit your wife with a golf ball?
It was awful. I mean, it's the worst sound I've ever heard. And I feel like you have to couch everything. People have been through way worse, but it was golf ball smashing into bone and skin on a person I love more than anybody, and it hurt, and she was rolling around screaming, and it was terrible. And then if that sound didn't wake me up in the middle of the night, the thought of, what if I duck hooked it or hit some sniping thing and it hit her in the head? And, we're there on a vacation, and we're there with our little boys, and my daughters had just left. And then what? I mean, so she's been unbelievable. She's so much tougher than me, and people say that, and haha. I would be complaining about it constantly. She has never one time given me any extra guilt. I've got enough on my own, and she's been amazing. So I can't say enough with how strong she's been through this thing. It's not been fun. She's still in pain, still can't walk without assistance, and people want to make it a joke, and it's crazy and fluky and all that, but it's not that funny, really.
No.
And I think there's some emotion to be dealt with there on both of our parts that we kind of stuffed, to use a psychology word.
Well, I hope she...
glad she's on the mend, though.
Yeah, I hope she's on the mend.
Yeah, no, she is. She'll be back. She'll be back to work, and just kills her not to work, and I get that. But, she'll be okay.
Joe, have a great call tonight. Thank you
Thanks,
always
Joe.
for your honesty. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
now
Joe.
that I'm all depressed.
Sorry
Blame
about that,
Peter.
Joe.
That was
up.
Peter.
You almost got out of it.
Jeez. All right, I'll try to gather myself.
Yeah, stay off social
All right.
media. Thanks, Joe.
God bless.
And then I'll go to Twitter.
Yeah.
Then I'll go to Twitter, and then I'll go to the New York Post.
Well, yeah, and the awful announcing article on your appearance should be up
already
soon.
writing,
So,
I can't wait.
Have a good
Cannot
have a
wait.
good call.
thanks, Joe.
All right, see ya.
Jets and the Bills tonight on Monday Night Football. You know what? That was refreshingly honest.
He is that though. Like he gives us no airs. Like that's the thing that I love about Joe. It's like number one, he doesn't suffer fools, but he's also just like he does not have a filter. He just gives you real answers. It's so refreshing.
And I don't want to play pop psychologist, but like when I think I nailed it, I never suggest that I'm perfect. Nobody's ever perfect. But you do sometimes think I did a good job. But he holds himself to a different standard. Like I never think I nailed it. Why? You're awesome at what you do. Nobody's going to be perfect. So, and Michael's kind of like the same way, where you instead of enjoying a job well done, always trying to figure out a way that you could do it better. And I guess that's what's the difference between people who do it well and people who do it very well and people who do it on a Hall of Fame level is that they're always looking to get better.
See, I don't ever think, the word nailed it makes you seem like, you're cocky, and I know that's not what you meant. You know when you've done a good job. I think that sometimes I go searching when I know I made a mistake or I didn't do a good job, and I'm looking to see, did people notice? And boy, they notice. And that's the time when I should stay away. You know what I mean?
Well, I used to do this thing when I first got on WWE TV. Because wrestling fans are obviously very specific and passionate also, especially anyone who's paying attention to what we talk about on our countdown shows. I would search my name. That's the craziest thing to do. Searching your name is truly masochistic and psychotic. If you reply me, whatever, but I no longer search to see what people said. It was always negative.
Right, but what's interesting is when you made a mistake, you go to social media, you're hoping that nobody noticed it or how many people noticed it. But again, you just can't. I'm the same way, but I just think that you can't think about it. And also, you also realize that the positive is also coming from a different place. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the positive is way over the top and not necessarily as positive as they make it out to be because maybe somebody has an agenda to trust, hey, like me kind of thing. So don't buy into any of it. It's a nice little guide. It's nice to interact with people. I do like social media that way. But if you're looking for confirmation on a job well done, that is not the place to go.
And a guy that's in the Hall of Fame said it affected him. So, you're not weak if it affects you. You're human. You're human. Hey, I talk for a living, and whether I'm in the studio or the ballpark,